What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to RizzoCast. This is episode number 27. Hope everybody had a very good Thanksgiving. We are joined today by a very special guest. He is the former Washington Nationals intern. He's a stats guru. He works with a few different podcasts, Bleacher Creatures podcast, Breaking Balls podcast, and he's also a data writer for Pitcher List, Max Greenfield. Max, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
So how was your Thanksgiving holiday? Did you do anything interesting?
Well, no, because we're not really allowed to do anything interesting. It was the second Thanksgiving with my girlfriend. She was here with my family. Didn't have anybody come over or anything. Didn't go anywhere because wanted to be safe. So it was nice, just a nice quiet day. Had turkey, all the stuff, and it was good. It was a nice time.
Yeah, mine was good too. We didn't do a whole lot. It was just me and my immediate family. I gotta ask this because I always think about it. How many times do you get Max Greenfield from New Girl? How many times do you get that comparison?
Oh,
Is
all
that
the
like
time.
often? Yeah.
All all the time. Like whenever, to be fair, I think it's better to just go with it. Like whenever somebody brings it up, I'm just like, yeah, I'm really good in that show. Uh, and then they're always like, oh yeah, you are in that, and I'm like, yeah. But yet, at a certain point when the show first became popular, it happened like very frequently to the point of like, I better just go with it or I'm gonna go insane. But yeah, I mean, it still pops up every now and again whenever he's in like a movie or something, or he has a new show coming out. People would just be like, "Hey, Max." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I saw it. You don't have to be the 80th person to tell me that."
Yeah. So I brought you on here today because I really enjoyed your Hall of Fame tweets. I like your Hall of Fame takes. I think you're very read up on the subject. And Hall of Fame time really for me is I love this time of year. I think I like the debates. I like the opinions. I like comparing different careers. I think it's a lot of fun. Um,
I
and I
agree.
like
It
seeing
is
the
a lot
good
of fun.
ballots. I like seeing the bad ballots. So is this something fun for you? Is this a fun subject for you? Or are you like, oh God, this time of year again?
No, I think this is like outside of like the post, the of the off season. This is the best time of the off season is when we're like in the thick of the Hall of Fame debate, because usually it also coincides with like the thickest of the market when the market's moving too. So, but it's not like that this year, obviously for a number of reasons. But so the Hall of Fame debate is always like super fun to just like look back at careers, and maybe you like when guys come onto the ballot, you're like, oh, that guy's better than I thought he was, or maybe I was overrating that guy. And then like you get to see different perspectives on players that might change your opinion on certain guys. Like, I wasn't always on the you know, Bobby Abreu for Hall of Fame train, when like I was thinking about future ballots. But then last year, some people made some pretty convincing arguments, showed comparison numbers and everything, and I was like, oh, okay. And like that's the fun of it. Is like you get sort of new information that can help shift your mind. The downside is like you might get information or about them that's not so pleasant to know, and you have to consider that too. But yeah, I like Hall of Fame debates. I think they're fun. I think they're interesting to look at. I'm not a writer, that can vote or anything, but it's definitely interesting to see what some of these people consider and what some of the other people don't.
Yeah, we were talking off the air beforehand about some of the crazy things that writers take into account. What
Yeah.
is the worst kind of method that you've seen regarding the Hall of Fame? I know the one that really grinds my gears is he shouldn't be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think he should get in. That one like is beyond frustrating for me because like I mean you're either a Hall of Famer or you're not. So what is
Yeah.
some of the ones that frustrate you?
I would agree that the first ballot one really grinds my gears. Like yeah, I agree. You're either a Hall of Famer or not. I think they just like the Hall of Fame voting, you only get to vote for 10. I think that's stupid. Like it's just if the question is if you're a Hall of Famer or not, you get the ballot and you just check as many boxes of how many Hall of Famers you think there are, because then it creates what might happen with some strategic voting, right? If you're Let's take last year for example. Larry Walker's like super borderline. He's going to be really close. Derek Jeter's a slam dunk. It's undebatable. He's getting into the Hall of Fame, no question about it. The only question was, would he be unanimous or not? One person didn't vote for him. And I'm not going to say that one person was wrong, because if they said, I know Derek Jeter's getting in, but there are 10 other guys on the ballot that are deserving, and I want to vote for those 10 other guys. Like if he was the deciding vote on Bobby Brew staying on the ballot or Larry Walker getting in, I can't really argue with his logic there of like, I didn't vote for Jeter because I had 10 other guys who were going to get in, and I knew Jeter was getting in, so I just didn't vote for him. I mean, he's not wrong. That's pretty smart, like being strategic with your ballot. I just think he shouldn't even have to do that. He should be able to vote for as many people, or she should be able to vote for as many people as they want. Like, it's just a matter of that 10 limit of 10, I think is just bad. I think it's dumb. I think the first ballot versus regular Hall of Famer, also dumb. I think the better question is like, are they an inner circle Hall of Famer, like one of the best players of all time, right? And we probably haven't had like an inner circle guy for a few years now. Like I think Jeter's great. He's definitely a Hall of Famer without a doubt. But like, you know, there are probably better guys on the ballot than him. You know, the thing about like inner circle is on in terms of how they play on the field, like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are inner circle Hall of Famers. There's no doubt about it. But they are so riddled with controversy, right? That it's been a struggle for them to get in. But so I think the first ballot, dumb. Limit of 10, dumb. And the people who who have weird steroid stances, like if you don't vote for Bonds and Clemens because they were rumored for it, but then you might vote for like Pettit or Sheffield, that's a little ridiculous in my mind. Like it's either you vote for all the steroid guys. Now if you want to draw the line at they were suspended, so like you won't vote for Manny Ramirez, I could at least understand that a little bit of like they broke the rules, they clearly did violate rules, but they were suspended and then put on the ballot. Hypothetically, they served their penance, right? They did their time, per se. So at that point, if they're on the ballot, they're considered to be voted for. So if you want to draw the line at that, you can, but I don't think you have to. I think if you think Manny Ramirez was a Hall of Famer and you don't care about the suspensions, that's fine. I mean, he has other off the field issues that people should consider, but it would probably be the steroids, the first ballot, and then the limit of 10. Those are the three main gripes I have with Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I didn't really think about the extending the ballot until now because there's not a lot of talk about it. But I do agree that, strategic voting shouldn't be the case. But since there is a limit, it is. And I believe
exactly.
the guy that didn't vote for Jeter didn't vote for anybody. I think he left his ballot blank. I think filtering out.
I don't think he ever said anything is the thing. So we'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know because he didn't. I don't know, but that's
another thing.
Should it be public?
The writers voted for it to be public, but the Hall of Fame said no. Why? Like if the writers say it's okay, then shouldn't it be okay if the writers? And the other thing is like the writers, if they post their ballot, they need to post an explanation. They need to explain their ballot. Like transparency is super important in this. Like being able to understand what the voters are thinking, very, very important.
They got to attach some kind of like column to it, and some people do, like an article. And I know we'll get into this a little bit later when we go over some of the candidates, but I saw somebody put in Ryan Thibodeau's inbox, or Thibodeau reposted it. Manny Ramirez got a vote, and Barry Bonds did not on one ballot. So I think that's one of the more interesting things.
That doesn't make sense.
It's hypocrisy.
That doesn't make sense. Yeah, because both of them did steroids. Both of them have domestic abuse allegations against them. So like you can't vote for one and not the other. Like there's no possible logic that you can use to defend that. But they don't explain why, and it's just like what?
Do you buy
that doesn't make sense to me.
Do you buy the argument, well, this person's in, that means that this person should be in?
No, I think that's a terrible argument. I think the argument of like, well, it comes up a lot with Curt Schilling, right? Because he's
Mussina,
an objective, yeah. It's also like Schilling's an objectively horrible human being, and there's other horrible human beings in the Hall of Fame, right? And it's sort of like, well, if they're in, Schilling should get in. No, like if we have the opportunity to not let people like Schilling, hateful neo-Nazi white supremacists into the Hall of Fame, we should not. Like we shouldn't do that. And just because there are people who got in 60, 70 years ago, right, when the Hall of Fame first started and everything, or 30 years ago, that doesn't change anything. Just because it happened then doesn't mean it should happen now. I also think people bring up a lot. Well, then we should just get rid of all the bad people in the Hall of Fame. I mean, personally, I got no issue with that. But second of all, it still doesn't it's still the logic doesn't hold true. They're like, well, that's what makes it fair. It doesn't matter. Like, we can't do anything about those people, but we can do something about Schilling. And like, off the field stuff is definitely a point of conversation with the Hall of Fame voting of, does it really matter? Should we even consider it? And like, that's a tough question. Like, I'm not, however one views it is up to them. If they think, we've all, like, based off of previous record of Hall of Fame voting, their play on the field seems to be the only thing that matters. So that's the only thing I'm going to consider. That's a fine argument. If you're saying, well, in the criteria for Hall of Fame voting, character is like a big part of it, so we need to consider that. Unless I can't vote for, X, Y, and Z, that's fine too. I like it. However you go about the character clause is fine by me. It's just I hate when I see people using it to say, well, Kurt Schilling could get in, but Barry Bonds can't because he did steroids, or Gary Sheffield can't because he did steroids. It's like, really, like, that's not what the character clause is there for. That's it's not there to do that. It's there to stop neo-Nazis from getting into the Hall of Fame, not if they did steroids or not.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point when you mention, because I do believe, if we do go back and take out some of the guys, like Ty Cobb would have to, go out or whatever, and some of the other people way back when. I mean, they're already dead. It wouldn't matter to them. However,
Yeah.
That would mean you'd have to go and completely bleach out everybody, and you'd have to, personally go in and look in the background of everybody. So yeah, but I do agree with your point there. So let's start with some of the players with, they have their first year on the ballot this year for them. So the Tim Hudsons, the Mark Burleys, the Torrey Hunters, the rest are kind of, they don't have a chance at all. So what do you think about some of these first ballot candidates that are on the ballot?
So I think I would say of those three, I think Hunter's the lowest. Very good defender, good hitter, not great hitter. Didn't play for like particularly long, and his peak was kind of that of a good player, not a great player, right? So, I think Hunter, it's sort of like he's the quintessential Hall of Very Good. Like, if I were, a voter, I would say doesn't meet my criteria. But if he stays on the ballot, maybe I'll give him more consideration. But I would say he probably falls off the ballot. I don't think he meets that 5% threshold. He's, I think he ends up with like around 50 career WAR in both Fangraphs and Baseball Reference. I think his weighted runs created plus was around 110 to 115, if I remember correctly. And those are good numbers. Like, definitely him being on the ballot is a good thing. Like, he deserves to be on that ballot. But I think he falls well short of the Hall of Fame standard. For Burley and Hudson, I think if the ballot wasn't already so crowded as it is, they would get more consideration. I still think they hold on to that 5%, but I think if you vote for Hudson, you have to vote for Burley. Like, their numbers are pretty much almost like Hudson has a lower like ERA, but I think their adjusted ERAs are pretty much the same, like off by a point or two. And then, their career WARs are very, very similar as well. They were not strikeout guys. They very much pitched to contact, and they were very good at that. They were very good at limiting hard contact, keeping it on the ground. And, both were good defenders. Burley's got a World Series ring. I think Hudson has one too. Yep. I think he won 2014 with the Giants. And both got Cy Young votes. Both were all-stars. Like, they're pretty much this. One's a lefty, one's a righty. That's like really the only difference between the two. And Burley had a no-hitter in a perfect game. That's it. Like, they're basically the same pitcher. So I think if you vote for one, you should vote for the other. I personally, on this ballot, I probably wouldn't vote for them. But like, if you vote for them, I wouldn't argue with you. Like, I think you have they're very good cases. They're pretty borderline. I could be swayed either way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Burley, I didn't realize Burley had, looking back, Burley had a better career than I thought he did. And Hudson, I think a lot of the old school voters are going to keep him on the ballot. just because, wins, they both have over 200 wins. That's not something that I would go by.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not something that you would go by either.
No, I wouldn't
Something
even consider it, but
yeah,
yes, I would
it's
agree with you.
something the older voters would. So I think that's kind of an interesting aspect to those two. And of course, the only returning second year on the ballot is Bobby Abreu, and you mentioned it before. And Abreu, high on base guy. I know the Phillies are trying to really make a push. They sent out a press release.
That's a little bit of a ridiculous argument that they made in their comparison to Mike. Like, I get that you want to put him in the Hall of Fame, but I was like, this is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah,
Because it shows weighted runs created of like a 30-point difference, and it's like, there it is. Like, massive difference in the weighted runs created plus. But yeah,
I mean, we forget that Bobby Abreu almost had 2,500 hits. He got on base a ton. He had years where he walked, like 100 times, like a decade straight or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, he was, before he, kind of got into his late career body, he was a pretty good outfielder too. So, he has a very interesting case, and I think now that the ballot has cleared up, maybe a little bit more of a, just a complete hitter.
The longer he stays on, the better shot he has. If he can keep above that 5%, he's basically a Tim Raines and Larry Walker, because Bonds and Clemens and Schilling are in their 9th year, and Sosa, I believe, are in their 9th years. So they're going to be off the ballot in 2 years anyway. And some of the newcomers on the ballot in the next few years, again, we're getting low in these like slam dunk Hall of Famers. We pretty much, it's like Ortiz, Ichiro, Beltre, and that's kind of it on these like first ballot guys. So a lot of these guys who are like low percentage guys like Abreu, they're gonna see big pushes in the next few years. And I think that the best fact, I love this stat about Bobby Abreu, is that he's reached base more times than Tony Gwynn did. Like,
crazy.
And Tony Gwynn was a good hitter. Like, there's no doubt about it. A guy who has a career 131 rated runs created plus is a pretty good hitter. I think that's his career rated runs created plus, last I checked. But actually, it's right here, I think. Nope, it's not. This screenshot.
Well, it didn't change from the last time.
But yeah, I'm just trying to make sure my memory was correct.
Yeah.
But Bobby Brew is a great hitter. Like, he was a really, really good hitter. Not like a very good defender or anything like that, but he was a very good hitter. He got on base a lot, and that should be considered when we talk about the Hall of Fame. Is like, all right, what was their triple slash line? What was their weighted runs created plus? I think the better comparison for Bobby Brew is somebody like Vladimir Guerrero, who they're very similar. And Guerrero got in on his 2nd year on the ballot, but everyone agreed that he was a Hall of Famer. And I would agree too. He was a great hitter. Vladimir Guerrero is a Hall of Famer. And Bobby Brew was just a slightly worse hitter than Vladimir Guerrero and was a better base runner and played the field. So I think if you put in Vladimir Guerrero, and I don't like doing this of like saying one guy's a Hall of Famer, so the other one should be, right? But I think that's a valid comp. If voters thought Vladimir Guerrero was a Hall of Famer, they hypothetically would think the same about Bobby Abreu, at least numbers-wise. Obviously, narrative, Vladimir Guerrero had a lot more narrative to him than Bobby Abreu did. But Bobby Abreu was a very, very, very good hitter, and definitely, if I had a ballot, he would appear on it.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you bring up a good point with staying on the ballot, and the ballot's going to be very clear the next few years. And voters just, there's going to be some voters that are just going to have to vote for somebody. They're going to feel as if they have to vote for somebody. You get a Hall of Fame ballot, and you're going to want to fill it out. So
there are people who live by the I have to vote for 10. And I wouldn't feel like you have to do that. Like, if you don't think there's 10, then you don't think there's 10. But if you want to vote for 10, that's going to help guys like Bobby Brew. It's already helping a certain shortstop. So we'll see.
We'll get to him for sure. And I know you have very strong feelings. Actually, you know what? Let's do it right now. Omar Vizquel is in his 4th year on the ballot.
He's going to see a huge jump this year.
Yes. He got what, 44, I think.
I think he got what, like 40% of the vote last time.
Looking at it now, 52.6% of the vote.
It wouldn't shock me if he got in, but he's definitely getting into that 65-70 range this year. He's going to go up big time.
So this kind of correlates with a question we got. Isaac Klein sent in a question from Twitter, and this is one that I know the answer to. Does he get in based on his Hall of Fame or based on his defense alone?
Yeah, I mean that's
It's a loaded
So
question.
I'll answer his question by saying yes, that's what he'll get him in.
Mm-hmm.
The second question is, should he get in? And the answer is no. Like Omar Vizquel was very good at making the play right in front of him. He made every routine play. He didn't commit a lot of errors, and errors is a very flawed stat, right? It's very subjective. I'm not really going to here to argue about the validity of defensive metrics, but uh, you know he didn't commit a lot of mistakes in the field. The problem is he wasn't necessarily like the rangiest shortstop or anything, or like this amazing arm. He was a good defender, a very good defender, and he played very good defense at shortstop for a very long time, and that's very admirable. But the other part is that there's two parts to a baseball game. There's hitting the ball and fielding the ball. If you're a position player, that man could not hit. Like he just couldn't. Like he racked up 2,800 hits because he played for 24 years. He has a career Fangraphs WAR and career Baseball Reference WAR of about 45, and he played 24 years. So he's basically a two-win player his entire career, which is the definition of an average player. And yet he's probably going to get into the Hall of Fame when he really shouldn't. Like he was a good defender, and everyone uses the Ozzie Smith comparison, which is all right. If you want to do that, that's fine. But Ozzie Smith was a better hitter. Ozzie Smith was also a very good base runner. And Ozzie Smith was a way better defender. Way better defender. Like, just not even. You could make. I personally believe that Andrelton Simmons, based off what we've seen, is a better defender at his peak than Ozzie Smith. But Ozzie Smith may play longer than Andrelton Simmons, so though Andrelton Simmons may not be as good of a career defender as Ozzie Smith. But like, there's nobody close to those two in my mind. Like, it's those two guys, and just Omar doesn't check. He just doesn't check the boxes. Like if he checks the good defense box, if you want to, put that. But that's it. He wasn't an elite base runner. He wasn't a good hitter. It just he basically gets remembered for standing out at shortstop and making good plays for 24 years.
Yeah, and he's not a home run guy, and so
no. Like he's just like when people talk about Omar Vizquel, and the other thing about Omar Vizquel is just like a month ago he was accused by his ex-wife of domestic violence, but everyone.
I didn't even hear about that. That tells
exactly.
Me how much...
That's the problem. It's just like when we talk about off-the-field issues, like we always focus on steroids, but it's like these people are terrible in a lot of ways that don't matter to what they did on a baseball field.
Yeah,
and so he's gonna get in. And if he gets in, like, will it be a sham? I don't know. Like, that's not really is Hall of Fame a sham or anything like that. They let in guys that they shouldn't, and they don't put in guys that they should. That happens all the time. But
yeah, I think if you're a singles hitter and it takes you 24 years to get
to 2,800 hits,
2,800 hits, I think that's not it's not ideal.
Not a good sign.
Not he had sign. I'm looking at it now, 688 OPS. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, I mean, he can't hit.
And I think the Ozzie Smith comparisons really showed up when he retired. I think that's when we started saying, "Oh, he's Ozzie Smith defensively," but he's not. He's not. So, yeah, Omar Vizquel probably going to get in, but
the answer is yes, he's going to get in, and like. But if the answer is he should he? The answer is no. Like, but I mean, depending on how you view it, the question of should Barry Bonds get in could be yes, but will he get in? The answer is probably no.
Now, what do you think about Andy Pettitte? Because Andy Pettitte is, I saw Barry Bloom. He might be with Forbes now. He was at MLB.com for a while. Voted for Andy Pettitte.
He did,
and I think Pettitte is getting support. I don't think Pettitte would have gotten the same support if he didn't have the New York jersey across his chest.
Well, then because he wouldn't have made the postseason as much. So that's definitely a factor.
I don't think he's got he's almost got a 4 earned run average.
Yeah, so Pettitte's interesting. First of all, steroids, right? Admitted use of steroids. So if you care about that, then that should wipe him away. If you don't, and I don't, then it shouldn't.
But I guess the argument against that for some voters that are voting for him and not Bonds and Clemens would be he did it the right way, and he
admitted to it. Like what
It
cognitive
adds on to the
dissonance do you have to tell
hypocrisy.
yourself? Yeah, whatever. But with Pettit, so he's definitely like he's the definition of borderline. Like
Mhm.
you could go one way or another. He is the definition of a borderline Hall of Famer. He has 60 career R WAR, 68 career FWAR, and about 3,300 innings. Um, his peak is good, not great, probably that a little bit below of a Hall of Famer, but he has above average longevity of that of a Hall of Famer. His ERA is closer to 4, but his adjusted ERA is still pretty good. I remember on Fangraphs it was like 80 something, 87, 88. So that's good. His FIP is lower than his ERA, so that's why his Fangraphs WAR jumps up. And his adjusted numbers are so good because he spent the bulk of that pitching in a very hitter-friendly AL East. So that's why it looks really good. Does the Yankee thing help? I'm gonna actually take the reverse. If it really was him being a Yankee help, I think he would be doing better. I think because if he were like thinking about like when CC Sabathia comes on the bat, CC Sabathia has arguably a worse case than Pettit, but I think CC's gonna fly in. Maybe not on his first year, but he's like I have no doubts that he's
I was
going to the
just going
Hall
to
of
bring
Fame.
him up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
So
going to bring
right.
him up because if you look on similar pitchers, some similarity scores on Baseball Reference, Sabathia is number 1.
Yeah, like the difference is CC got a lot more strikeouts. Obviously, 3,000 strikeouts, third left-handed pitcher of all time to do that. But um, with Pettit, it's if the Yankee thing were really helping him, I think he would be doing better. I think what people don't realize about Pettit is that he was a good regular season pitcher, and then he gets an added bonus. If you were good in the postseason, I think that should help you. If you were bad, I don't think it should deter you. Like I don't. If it's pretty much were they good? Yes. Okay, that's something to consider. Were they bad? Yes. Whatever. Let's look at the bigger sample size, right? And Pettit was good in the postseason. He was very good in the postseason. Again, I don't consider wins or losses, but I know old-time voters do. He's first all-time in postseason wins, and I think of pitchers that had at least 10 or 15 seasons. I can't remember which. I think it was 10 seasons. He's the only pitcher all-time to never have a losing season, where he had more losses than wins. I don't care about that at all, but I know some people would be like, "Oh, that's very impressive," right? So some people might factor that in. I think for Pettit, what's tough is that again the ERA just doesn't jump out at you like it's 3.8 something, and adjusted is like 80, 87, 88 ERA minus, like a 120 ERA plus, right around there or something like that, which is again like Hudson and Burley, good, not great, but he was the guy you wanted to give the ball to in the postseason when the game was, when the series was on the line. You wanted to give it to Andy Pettit, and some voters that puts him over the edge. I think he gets in anyway, just because of I think his regular season numbers are good enough on a longevity wise to put him in. But if you don't want to vote for him because you think there are 10 other guys who are more deserving, you could totally convince me that there are 10 other guys that are more deserving than him. But he's very, very close. Like, if he doesn't get in, I don't think it's a travesty. If he does get in, I would be like, okay, cool. I think he's one of the few people on the ballot who he's not a bad person. Like, he's a genuinely good dude. And B, I think it's just sort of, he's been a little hindered by Clemens and Schilling being in front of him. And then Musina, the last
Yeah.
year or 2 years ago, right? So I think that's a big part of it that is a factor that needs to be considered. But if I had a ballot, I would probably vote for Pettit, but I understand if people wouldn't.
And then, of course, moving on here, we'd have to hear the Coors Field argument for Todd Helton. We heard it for Larry Walker all those years, and here we go hearing it again with Todd Helton. And I think I think I replied to a tweet of yours, and I said, I think Coors Field takes a toll on you more than it actually helps you, because playing in high altitude, it's tough. I mean, you still got to wake up in the morning for 81 games, and it's not easy
Yep.
being up there. And Helton had a very, very good peak.
Helton
Whether
was a borderline MVP for like five years there. Like, he was really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
If Barry Bonds didn't play, Helton probably might win an MVP somewhere in there.
very underrated too. Very underrated. He hit over like 330 a few times. I mean, the guy was just an amazing hitter. And I
And a
think
good
everybody,
defender.
yeah, good defender. I think everybody thinks of him as, very professional at bat. I mean, he would spoil. I saw him at the end, so I would always remember Todd Helton spoiling pitches left and right.
Tough out, as they would say.
Tough out, really tough out. I remember him and Matt Cain went at it. There's like a 16 pitch at bat.
I miss Matt Cain. He was so good in his piece.
Yeah, Matt
so
Cain, talk about a guy that doesn't get run support.
Yeah, sure.
No run. I was at his last game actually, but
I really liked Matt Cain as friend. But yeah, Todd Helton. I actually remember watching Todd Helton pitch against Matt Cain. I think he worked like a 9-pitch at bat. I remember Cain literally. I think he was pitching. I don't remember who he was pitching to, but he looked at his catcher and he was just like, "I got nothing. Like, what do you want to throw? Like, I got nothing to get this guy out." And that was Todd Helton. He was such a good hitter that he knew what pitchers were going to come with before they even knew it somehow. Like, he was thinking of the situation at all times. And I think the Coors argument is wildly out of proportion. If you want to do the stupid like road versus home stats thing, which is dumb, don't do that with Coors players. Just don't do that. It's bad. It's bad logic. But if you want to do that, he had like a career 389 on base percentage on the road. That's higher than like, I think 14 of the corner infielders already in the Hall of Fame. That's insane. Like,
wow.
When he was on the road, first of all, if you go on Twitter, there's a Todd Helton for Hall of Fame account. Follow it because it posts the best Todd Helton stats. And he's just been flooding my timeline with Todd Helton. And I'm not complaining because I think he's great and I think he's a Hall of Famer. But yeah, I mean, Todd Helton should have, on paper, like Larry Walker, he should have been in on the first ballot. Like, he's one of those guys who's like one of the best hitters of his generation, one of the best players of his generation. He should have flown in, just soared in. But because he played in Colorado, he didn't get a lot of love. But he's already, I think, +7 in like the 15 ballots that have been reported this year.
Yeah.
So he could zoom way up the leaderboard, which would be great because he deserves it. He's a Hall of Famer. That's the only question.
Yeah,
is he a Hall of Famer or is he not? And he is. He's without a doubt a Hall of Famer. I think he has some DUI issues, but like if you care about that, I'm going to bring up character issues a lot because I think they're important to consider when voting. Is like, we're talking about the full body of work on and off the field, and if you think that's that putting people's lives in danger because you were driving inebriated is a big deal, I'm not. That's your view of the issue. I can't tell you you're wrong. And if you don't want to vote for him for that, that's fine. But if you can't vote for him because you didn't think he was a Hall of Fame deserving baseball player, I think you're nuts. Like, there's just nothing you can point to me that says he's not a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best hitters of the last. I mean, outside of Barry Bonds, he's probably one of the 5 best left-handed hitters since like 1990. He's just that good.
Yeah, he had a lot of good people around him. He made a lot of people around him better. Troy Tulowitzki, Cargo, Matt Holliday.
Even Nolan Arenado. He played with Nolan Arenado for like his first 2 years, didn't he? I think
I think Arenado came up in 2013. I think,
which is right around when Helton retired. I think Arenado's like first or second year was Helton's last year, something like that.
Yeah,
that's definitely But I mean, he made every infielder that he played with better. First base defense, like it. If you are a good defender at first base, you can make an impact. But if you're not, it doesn't really change too much. But he made an impact with his defense. Like Colorado, I feel bad because at this point in time, who knows what's going on with that franchise. But he is, in my mind, he's the face of that franchise. When I think of Colorado Rockies, I think of Todd Helton.
Is he the only guy in Colorado with his number retired?
I think they were going to retire Larry Walker's in 2020, so he is the only guy for now until Larry Walker's is retired.
But it was retired before Larry Walker, and that tells you something.
Yeah, yes, yeah. He's Mr. Rocky, like of guys who have been the face of their franchises. He is the guy for the Colorado Rockies, and he should be in. Like, there's no.
Yeah. So
there's only.
I have a really good Andrew Jones argument because I don't think he should be in, and you may disagree with me. Listen, a lot of people say he's the best defender they've ever seen, and I'll buy that. But just the second half of his career, just there's nothing in his 30s. There's nothing, and I know he did come up at 19, and I know that was
he turned 30, and then he completely fell off.
Yeah, and I
Like
didn't realize he had 430 something homers. I didn't realize that was.
I
Um,
think,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I get you. I get what you're saying. Like I think if he retires at 30, I think he waltzes into the Hall of Fame by now.
There's just no production after
It,
30.
there's
Nothing.
the peak is there. Like
Hmm.
there's no doubt about it. But the longevity, I mean, he was just so bad after that that it's like holy cow.
I mean, he
You're
was in
looking
Japan. He was in independent ball. I mean, it got pretty rough
he
for him. He still might be
he
playing somewhere.
but Andrew Jones probably shouldn't be in because he was arrested for domestic violence. Like actually arrested, not like accused or anything. He was arrested for it. So that's what he has on other guys with domestic violence issues. He was arrested for it. Which if that's a no-brainer for you and that takes him off, that's fine. Um, in terms of on the field, he's got the 60 career WAR barely in both Fangraphs and Baseball Reference. Uh, it's the post 30 that actually he was at like 63 career WAR in both, and then post 30 it actually brings his numbers down. Like so, I think if I were not to consider any off the field issues, I would vote for Andrew Jones because the defense is, I mean, maybe Willie Mays is the only center fielder better than him defensively in history. Like he is that good defensively, just amazing. The uh the bat is good, not great, but since the glove was great, it's sort of not Omar Vizquel like at all. It's he was a good enough hitter to put him in because of his defense. But if you don't want to vote for him because of the drop off at 30, I would say that the peak is good enough to put him in there anyway, but I could totally understand that like you might care more about longevity than peak,
Hmm.
and that's perfectly fine. That's a fine view in my opinion. Like if you're a longevity person, then Andrew Jones probably shouldn't be in, like because he had no longevity. But if you're a peak person, and I probably lean a little bit more into the peak, I lean whichever way the player goes. Like if the player is like Andy Pettit is a longevity guy, but I think he should be in because of that. He wasn't a very good peak. Jones was a great peak guy, but not a very good longevity guy. I
Yeah.
still think that you can make an argument that he should be in. It just depends on the player, but I I would say Jones is in for me if you consider no off the field issues. If you do consider off the field issues, I think Jones should not be in.
Can you imagine if he kept going and he maybe moved to a corner outfield spot?
Yeah,
He could be.
what's crazy is he probably could have gotten to like that 80 WAR threshold if like he had stayed healthy and like kept going, producing at center field for like another 2, 3 years, and then faded into right field for like 3 years after that. Yeah, he probably we would be talking about him as maybe one of the greatest players of the last like 40 years.
Yeah. For sure. And center field's weak after, you look at Mays, Cobb, Mantle, Trout,
Mantle,
Griffey, DiMaggio, Snyder. There's nobody after
yeah,
that that's in the Hall of Fame that's relevant, right? So,
yep,
um,
it's definitely tough out there for center fielders for some weird reason, despite them being like us the most important outfield spot.
yeah. All right, let's go to Scott Rowland because Scott Rowland has my support.
Oh yeah,
Give me your case for Scott Rowland.
I think out of everybody on this ballot, he is the most slam dunk Hall of Famer.
Wow.
There's no
Okay.
off the field stuff. He is arguably the like second best defender ever or third best defender ever at third base behind Brooks Robinson and Adrian Beltre. He was a great hitter, like actually a great hitter. The thing that people don't realize is that he's really low on the counting stats because he just didn't play very long. But he was a great player. There's nothing you can say bad about him off the field. On the field, he was a great defender. He was a great hitter, and he was a like okay enough base runner, right? That there's no argument against him in my mind. Like you cannot argue that he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. He's got 70 career WAR in Fangraphs and Baseball Reference, I believe. He might be actually a little bit under in Fangraphs. I can't remember, but he's got 70 career Baseball Reference WAR. He's like a 125 career weighted runs created plus hitter, 300 plus home runs, 2,300 hits. Like and amazing defense at third base. I mean, again, the third best defensive third baseman of all time in my mind, behind Brooks Robinson and Adrian Beltre. Like, there's no argument against him in my mind. Like when I think he's one of the few guys where I'm like, why aren't you voting for him? Like I genuinely can't see why people wouldn't vote for him. He should
Yeah.
he should have sailed in on his first ballot, and I think he'll make a lot of gains this year. I really do. I think like he's gonna be like Helton and a Vizquel who makes a lot of gains, but unlike Vizquel, he actually deserves to make a lot of gains this year. Like Scott Rowland should be in the Hall of Fame. Like there's no argument against him in my mind.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I think third base is the least represented position in the Hall of Fame. I think it has the least number of people in
And
it.
he is an upper tier third baseman. Like he's one of the best third basemen ever on
Yeah,
both ends of
and
the ball. Just no data,
mhm.
no debate in my mind. Like I don't understand when writers can like say vote for Omar Vizquel but can't vote for Scott Rowland. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. Vizquel was a good defender, but Rowland was arguably better and just really, really amazing player.
He's the type of guy that, nobody, maybe the average baseball fan didn't think was a Hall of Famer during his playing days. They didn't look at him and say, "Oh, he's going to be a Hall of Famer." And then afterwards you
Yeah,
look and it's like, "Wow, he compiled all these." But I do
that
think
was
that
definitely me. When he
yeah,
got on the ballot, I didn't realize how good he was. Like I went back and went, "Oh my God, Scott Rowland was amazing!
he
Holy
was
cow!"
good. Yeah.
Yeah, like he was a really good player. He had a 9-win season. So random. I think he had like a few 7-win seasons, and then in like 2003, I think he had like a 9-win season. He was really good,
Mhm.
really, really good. He deserves to be in. No debate against him in my mind.
Yep. So we're at the halfway point for Manny Ramirez. And Manny is my thoughts regarding the suspension. I could go both ways. I could understand because, I mean, let's be honest, the second one really kind of, you know, took him out of baseball. It
It
ended his
did quite
career.
literally.
So, and if you want PED suspensions to count, then why aren't they longer? Right? Because 50 games at the time, I guess they're longer now with 80. Um, but he served the 50 games. I mean, he served the
Yeah, he
punishment.
served both
Mhm.
suspensions, technically speaking.
Yeah,
But
but I understand that he knew what he was taking, and from what I've heard, he took some hardcore stuff like or
yeah,
whatever, like horse reproduction. I don't know what he took, but it was weird.
yeah,
um, but like horse human growth, or well, not human growth, but whatever. Manny Ramirez
yeah.
was arguably one of the best left fielders offensively. Ted Williams, Barry Bonds, Manny Ramirez is right up there, top five.
Yep.
So what is your thoughts? Do those suspensions kind of take you out of him, or are you still very much involved in his?
So as I talked about before, like if you are a voter and you say they broke the rules, they got suspended, that's it. Like with Robinson Cano recently, right? If that's how you view it, I can't say you're wrong. Like they clearly broke the rules. Like that's it's fine to view it that way. My view is you're right. They did break the rules, but they served their suspension and then they got put on the ballot. So the Hall of Fame must want us to consider them to vote for them. So I'm going to vote for them if they got suspended or whatnot, right? So like I would vote for Robinson Cano on the Hall of Fame still. I would still vote for him even though he failed twice. Uh, with Manny, he was suspended. He was accused of domestic assault by his ex-wife. Um, so you have the steroids on top of a domestic violence issue. You're probably listening to this and wondering, man, all these people have domestic violence issues. What's wrong with these people? Yeah, it's not hard to be a good person, people. Like, don't hit your wife. Just be a decent human being, and we don't have to have these discussions. Um, so, with regards to the suspensions, it wouldn't hold me back, but if it does hold another person back, that's fine. In terms of his play on the field, there's no doubt about that he's one of the best right-handed hitters we've ever seen. Like a career 153 weighted runs created plus. I mean, he could hit. There's just one of the best hitters we've ever seen in our lives. Um, his defense was interesting to say
Fenway
the
helped him.
least.
Fenway helped him.
Yeah, he it was a bit of an adventure out there at times for Manny Ramirez, but it didn't. I mean, it didn't matter. He would hit 320 with 410 on base and a 600 slug, and just hit 30 to 40 home runs a year, and he was just a monster at the plate. Oh, I mean, an actual monster. So
He could have kept going.
yeah, I think the case for Manny Ramirez is plain and simple of that he's one of the best hitters we've ever seen. Again, so just like Andrew Jones, if you don't care about off the field stuff, and I'm not going to say that you're wrong for doing that, then yeah, he should be in. If you do, then just like Jones, he probably shouldn't.
And I think I just convinced myself when I said that Manny, um, the second suspension ended his career, because I think that's, it knocked him out of baseball. I mean,
It did. Like,
he signed a
he
minor
never
league
came
deal with
back.
the A's, but he never came back. Never
Yep.
did. So
Because he was going to face a suspension for the domestic violence allegation against him, so he just walked away from baseball after that. So
it ended in
it
Billy
did quite a bit.
Wagner. Billy Wagner. I am so high on Billy Wagner. I think the guy's absurdly underrated. I mean, like he's got a career Ks per nine of 12 point. No, that's in Houston.
Highest,
Amazing, though. It's
12.
11.9.
He's like which is the highest all time on K per 9. So
And doesn't he have like the lowest ERA plus besides Kimbrel and like Rivera or something?
he's got the lowest WHIP in baseball history. Like I think he's top 5 in ERA plus behind like Kimbrel and Rivera, right? So the thing that holds back Billy Wagner is simply that he's not Mariano Rivera, which I think is ridiculous. I think that's like, I understand that there are people out there who say we should evaluate pitchers, relievers, and starters on the same scale because all relievers are failed starting pitchers, which may or may not be true. I would say it's more true than probably not. But
it's crazy how hard it is to get in as a reliever.
Billy Wagner was dominant, like just dominant. He is the second best relief pitcher of all time. Like there's a huge gap between him and Rivera. I'm not going to debate that there is a large gap, but he's still the second best at his position to ever do it, right? We voted Ricky Henderson as the best leadoff hitter, and then we voted in Tim Raines as the second best leadoff hitter, right? But there's a large gap between Ricky Henderson and Tim Raines, right? Like, but Tim Raines was still a Hall of Famer. It's sort of a similar with that situation right now with Mo and with Mo and Wagner. I think I would vote for Wagner. Let me get that clear. I would 100% vote for him. But if you don't want to vote for a reliever because you evaluate relievers on the same scale as pitchers, baseball-wise, I'm not going to say that you're wrong for doing that. Like in terms of your baseball thinking, you are correct that relievers are just failed starters and everything, and that's fine. I think it's not fair to do that because relievers are their own position in my mind. But if you don't consider it that way, which is, I think it's a tough argument to make, but you can make it, then that's, I understand why you wouldn't vote for Billy Wagner because he's not Mariano Rivera. I think that's unfair, but I can understand the logic. And that's what I look for when talking about the Hall of Fame is, can I understand your logic behind your reasoning? And I can understand that logic. I don't agree with it, like, at all, but I can understand it. And I would vote for Billy Wagner. I think he's the second best reliever of all time. He was dominant. I don't care when Chris Russo brings up his terrible playoff resume. He faced like 30 guys.
I was going to mention that. Mm-hmm.
I don't care.
Russo brings up his postseason and he brings up Hoffman's postseason. I think
they had like 2 postseasons under their belt. Like, who cares? You're talking about a sample size of like 50 people.
It's not fair.
It's not fair. It's so stupid in my mind. It's just so dumb.
And he also, I think one thing that might go against him is he didn't really play in many games. He only played in 850. He only appeared in 853 games.
He didn't pitch for very long. No, I think if the thing is, like, if he had lasted like 17, 18 years, right? Billy Wagner, like he'd pitched, let's say like a Mo kind of length, he probably floats in. Like he definitely he glides into the Hall of Fame because he's got that longevity and he's probably got the save total that they're looking for. But yeah, without a doubt, he was dominant. He was just and he was just as good in his last season as he was in the middle of his career.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was really unfortunate what happened to him. I think Edgar Renteria laid down a bunt in the division series in 2010, and he tore his Achilles. Billy Wagner tore his Achilles. So, but he's in for me. So
yeah, I would vote for Billy Wagner.
Yeah. All right, let's. We got about 6 guys left. We're going to speed it up here. Gary Sheffield, for me, I think he's underrated on the ballot. I think that he's, if he was, here's one thing that is a problem with Sheffield to voters. They don't identify him with the team. I think Chipper Jones, a guy who played with one team, is easier to vote in than a guy like Gary Sheffield. And I also think that Sheffield's, he didn't really have a position. I think if he was a DH,
Oh, he was terrible in the field. He was
if he was a DH, he'd be
horrible.
in. If he's a DH, his WAR would, get up
actually
there.
go up.
It would go
His
up.
WAR would
Yeah.
act. That's how bad he was defensively. And that's an argument against him, is that his defense was so bad.
Yeah,
that
D-WAR is a little skewed, I understand, but negative 27.7, it doesn't matter if it's skewed or not. That's pretty rough.
That's like it's not the perfect stat, right? But like that's really bad.
Yeah, a guy who didn't strike out, always hit for a good average.
He was a 140 career weighted runs created plus. I think him and Ramirez are very tied together. Steroid issues very much the same, but Ramirez a little bit better of a hitter. But Sheffield was really damn good too. So I think if you vote for Ramirez, I think you don't have to vote for Sheffield, but I think if you vote for Sheffield, you have to vote for Ramirez in terms of if you completely ignore steroids and don't care about off the field stuff, right? But Sheffield, I would vote for him. He rumored with steroids. That's the worst thing he did, but he could flat out hit.
He gets overlooked. It's amazing to me.
He 500 career home runs, career 300 hitter, career close to 400 on base percentage. Like he could hit, like he could just hit. And there's just nothing in my mind that says that he shouldn't be in. If you were like, his defense was just so bad though, I would say you're right. But he had a 140 weighted runs created plus in his career. Like just he could hit. And he's got the counting stats that you want to, like over 2,600 hits, over 500 home runs. Like offensively, you cannot keep him out of the Hall of Fame. And again, as we said, steroids are not really a reason to keep people out if they didn't actually fail a test.
Yeah, I do think that the teams thing hurts him.
I agree. I agree with you. I think that actually does play a factor.
It's a really, really horrible reality, but it's honestly the truth. Like Fred McGriff got hurt by it too. So, there's a few guys that have been hurt by it. So we agree on Sheffield there. Jeff Kent is another guy who is, he's got the most home runs at second base. Very interesting. I mean, he had a lot of years with 100 RBIs, but that, of course, is not of interest anymore because, he was in some good lineups, Barry Bonds hitting in front of him and behind him.
Yep, he had Barry Bonds in front or behind, so that kind of helps when the guy in front of you is getting on base like 60% of the time. So that's definitely going to help. With Ken,
I think he's better than Craig Biggio.
I can see that argument. Kent and Pettit are very similar. They're like the definition of borderline, like super, super close. Kent, the other problem with Kent is, unlike Pettit, people hated Kent. Like he's not a popular guy. That's a part of like what we talk about that we don't necessarily talk about with the Hall of Fame voting is like people don't want to vote for some guys just because they were dicks. They were just not like they weren't fun to be around. And Jeff Kent is one of those guys. He wasn't a nice guy. He wasn't like so these writers that they kind of hold it against them a little bit. Not all of them. For the most part, like I think they put it aside, but like there's a few people out there who don't want to vote for Jeff Kent just because they're like he was an asshole. But I think for Kent, he's the best hitting second baseman, probably all time.
I think he's even better overall player than Ryan Sandberg.
You could make that argument. Like his defense was okay. It wasn't like amazing, and it wasn't atrocious. It was okay. I had Jeff Kent on my ballot, my mock ballot last year. I waffled super hard last year. I'm waffling super hard again this year. If someone wants to make an argument like that puts him in, I'll listen. If someone wants to make an argument that puts him out, I'd listen. I think just like Pettit, if he got in, great. If he doesn't, I'm not gonna be too disappointed about it. I would say Jeff Kent is. I would lean vote yes, but I could definitely be swayed to vote no. But it's close.
Start too.
Not a very long career. That's the other thing. It's like it's a very, but he does that MVP really helps him out. Like I think that MVP really gives him some more votes than like if he doesn't have it, like there's a real question of like does he fall off? But he's tough. It's definitely tough.
Bond should have probably won it that year.
100%. Bond should have won, but like Bonds was hated by the media. So,
But the MVP, back to Chris Russo. I mean, you have to. It's crazy.
Russo brings it up all the time.
Russo votes
All
for
the
like
time.
4 guys every year, and Kent's one of them.
And it makes
Like,
no sense. He won't vote. I don't think he votes for Scott Rowland, but he'll vote for Jeff Kent, and I don't get it. Like that one really blows my mind. He also
does
votes
he
for
have any
Vizquel,
black
so
ink?
makes no
Oh
sense.
gosh. But yeah, so Jeff Kent. All right. Sammy Sosa. Here's the guys that are on their 2 years left. Sosa to me is, and I understand that steroids wouldn't be keeping a guy out, but his difference from Bonds and Clemens is that
Wasn't that good of a hitter in terms of like
that's
what you
one
would
thing.
expect.
I think he's very similar to McGuire in that respect. Also, I think Bonds and Clemens were very accomplished before the reported use of steroids. So like Clemens had the Cy Youngs. Bonds was 400, 400. Who was Sammy Sosa?
Already going to be
Who was Sammy
Sosa.
Sosa?
Sosa needed the steroids to become there. I don't necessarily like that could matter to some people. It doesn't matter to me. But the thing about Sosa is he's like a career 122 weighted runs created plus hitter when he's got 600 home runs. So he was literally just hitting home runs or singles. That's it. He didn't like. I went through his numbers. I was like, man, this guy literally only hit home runs and singles. He didn't walk a ton. He didn't strike out a ton, or he did strike out a lot. Sorry, but that's it. It was hit home run, hit a single. That's it.
He was
That's
averaging 26 doubles.
Yeah, like that's for a guy who hits 600 home runs. You'd be like, yeah, he's probably like hitting 60 home runs and 35, 40 doubles. Nope, nope, not a lot of doubles, not a
Yep,
lot of
didn't
triples.
walk.
Didn't walk. He just hit a lot of home runs. He was okay in the field. I think I didn't vote for Sosa, but I still probably wouldn't vote for Sosa to be honest. Like I think he's just below for me, but it's close. Like
Yeah,
he's
very
really
similar
close.
to McGuire.
McGuire definitely like was a better hitter than Sosa because McGuire walked a lot. But yeah, I would vote for McGuire before I voted for Sosa, like
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
So let's separate Kurt Schilling here from the steroid guys. Let's do Schilling first.
Yeah.
You mentioned it before. He garbage human being, but I think that it goes beyond politics with him, why he's not in.
Yeah.
Because if you look at
It's
his
not politics.
vote percentage in 2013, and I understand there's more people voting in 2013. That was before they did the whole dump of the people who haven't been voting. Only got 38.8% of the vote. So people don't actually, or at least didn't actually think Kurt Schilling was a Hall of Famer. I mean, I think if you take away postseason, postseason is, I guess, kind of puts him over for a lot of people. I mean, but
Definitely.
Mussina's compared a lot to him, but he's a really, really interesting case.
I think if we just look at the numbers, yes, he's got 3,000 strikeouts, 80 career WAR. Like guy should be in the Hall of Fame, but he's only got like 213 wins or something, so that held a lot of people back on him. Like a lot of people were held back on that for him, which is dumb. I'm not going to debate that. But I mean, for Schilling, it's not politics. It's the guy's literally a white supremacist, a literal neo-Nazi. It's not politics. If politics helped people out, people wouldn't have voted 100% for Mariano Rivera because the guy's a Trump supporter.
Yep.
Like, it's not. That's your proof that it's not politics. For Schilling, he's just a horrible person.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a terrible human being. Well, one of the guys at Pitcher List, Zach Hall, wrote a piece for Pitcher List about why Schilling shouldn't be in, and it was basically just because he's a terrible guy. And the as I've said with off the field issues, like I think it's either all or nothing. Like I'm not going to play arbitrary or what's worse, somebody who's a domestic abuser or a neo-Nazi. Like they're both bad. Like so, if you care about off the field, I wouldn't vote for either of them. But if you don't, then you should vote for both of them hypothetically. Yep. But at the same time, a little bit of me is like, yeah, but a neo-Nazi is just so much worse, right? Like he's an actual neo-Nazi, and that's Schilling. It's just that's hard. Like Schilling is just such a horrible human being that I would never vote for the guy. ever. Like he's just too horrible for me.
Yeah,
Great
he's
pitcher,
actually
but
it's
terrible
funny
human
because
being.
he's live right now on Twitter as we speak. So
Oh God.
yeah, it's not politics. Just like kind of Aubrey Huff's whole deal is in
It's not
politics.
politics. It's just hate. It's just hateful rhetoric. And
Hmm.
like my fear is if he gets in, it's like, what is his Hall of Fame speech gonna be? You
What
know?
is that whole thing going to look like? I mean, he's going to be standing there next to Derek Jeter and Larry Walker, and it's just going to be nuts.
Yeah. You're gonna be standing next to the first black owner in baseball history, one of the nicest dudes in baseball, and then there's gonna be you, a
Hmm. He might be the only
literal
guy
neo
to get
Nazi.
in.
If it's going to be hysterical if he's a couple votes short or and Vizquel's a couple votes short. It's just it's going to be so either whatever happens with Schilling. It like I think he doesn't deserve to be in. I would be upset if he got in, but like I wouldn't be too upset.
I saw he lost a vote too on one of the somebody took a vote away from him. So that's
Thank
interesting.
God.
All right,
Keep it going.
yeah, Bonds and Clemens. Final thing here. Just to kind of do an overview for me for steroids, and let me get it real quick because this is important in my opinion. Jose Canseco wrote this book. Okay,
Oh yeah, Juiced. I've heard of that book.
called out a ton of people for using steroids. This was before everything happened. You know, before everybody
Yeah.
was McGuire, Bonds. You know, he named all the people that he thought were doing it. He was spot on with every single person. And Ivan Rodriguez was one of them. Ivan Rodriguez is in the Hall of Fame. There's steroid users already in the Hall of Fame. Mike
Yep.
Piazza admitted in his book, I have it up there too, that he used Andro, which was the same thing
Yeah.
that Mark McGuire was using. I cannot, I just don't understand it. I mean, there's guys that are already used that are in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. If if you don't care about steroids, there's just but obviously Bonds, domestic abuse. Clemens had an underage relationship with a girl and then she killed herself. So like those are bad.
That's
Like
right. I forgot
yeah.
about that one. See, this is
Again,
not. Yeah,
just it's so easy to not be a terrible person, and then we don't have to discuss this. I don't think those things lose them votes. It might lose them like 2 or 3 votes a year though, which is ridiculous to me. Like the fact that they're losing more votes from steroids than they are from like being absolutely heinous people. Uh, so yeah, I mean, we already voted for Piazza, we already voted for Bagwell, we already voted
yeah,
for
Bagwell too.
Rodriguez. Like there are players throughout history, like Hank Aaron said he took, I think, greenies, right, which was like a weird form of steroid back in the day. We've already let in people who cheated, quote unquote.
Yeah, amphetamines is banned today, and that's what they were doing.
So it doesn't make sense. Listen, if you don't care about off the field stuff, vote for them because they're Barry Bonds is the greatest player who's ever played baseball. Like it's him and Babe Ruth. If you vote for if you think it's Babe Ruth, that's fine. But like in my mind, it's Barry Bonds. It's just insane how good he was. But it just these people have these such weird issues to bring up about steroids with them. It's like, but the reason that they hold it against them is because they didn't need it to be great. They already were, which is part of the reason people don't want to vote. But I think what's interesting about Bonds and Clemens is they've only gone up 1% for like the last 3 years. I just don't think they're getting in. And like, if you want to say that's a travesty, I can understand. Like, I wouldn't be too upset if they didn't get in just because of like, they did pretty terrible things. But I think if you're sort of like the Baseball Hall of Fame needs to represent the very best of baseball in terms of production, then yeah, you need to put them in. Like they're Roger Clemens is arguably one of the best, is arguably the greatest pitcher of all time, and Barry Bonds is the greatest player of all time. So,
And plus,
they
Bonds was on this stuff, but he was facing pitchers that were on the same stuff that he was on, and he was
yeah,
still way
same
better than
same
all of them.
same with Clemens, right?
Same
Like
with Clemens, yeah.
yeah, he juiced, but like so did a bunch of the players that he faced, and he
Mm-hmm.
still got him out, right? Like when people talk about juicing, they talk about that era, like, oh, it's bad when they juice. Yeah, but so many people were doing it. And
Mhm.
you put Bud Selig in the Hall, and he oversaw that whole thing, and he didn't do a damn thing to stop it.
And the sports writers made money off this era.
Exactly. They don't vote for him because Clemens and Bonds were dicks to the media. That's why they don't vote for him. And like they can use the justification of steroids to vote for him. If they actually cared, they would say, well, Bonds hit his wife and beat his wife, and that's why he's not in. I would respect any writer who came out and said that those were the reasons that they're not voting. I would be like, I respect you because you clearly are going about this in the way that you think is morally right. And I respect that. They
Nobody has the
don't do
balls
that.
to do that.
Nobody does that, though. Nobody has the gall to do it. Which, by the way, I think if that somebody who did do that, they would be immediately respected because they'd be like, I can't argue with you.
Mhm.
You're right. Like
Exactly.
I'm not going to take up a moral argument. I think people's like objections are like, it's not the hall of how good of a person they are. Yeah, but who they are as people matters to their baseball career. Like how they represent the game of baseball is important. That's
Mhm.
why nobody had a problem voting for Mariano Rivera because he was the nicest guy in the world. Like the people were happy for Larry Walker because he's the nicest guy. Like it's a lot easier when they're nice. Like that's what I tell people all the time. It's like, well, how was Mo the first unanimous? Because it was easy to vote for him. Because he was a good person.
And
You
he's the
wanted
best
to
at his
vote for him.
position of all
Yeah, and
time.
he's the best at his position of all time. There's no debate there. So it's like it becomes so much easier when it's stuff like that.
Mhm. All right, so that was a good discussion. We're gonna wrap it up real quick. Um, you have a new gig for Pitcher List. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what Pitcher List is and how you
Yeah,
got
so
involved?
Pitcher List is a great website run by Nick Pollock and VP Alex Fast, who was on MLB Network, I think, like 2-3 weeks ago.
Saw him.
Um,
Yeah.
yes, they do a lot of really interesting research and stat stuff there, and I'm part of their Going Deep data science team. So, like, if people need to look up information for their articles and stuff, I can help them find that information, and then I sort of write about players or statistics that are interesting to look at. Um, so my first piece was on Jonathan Loaizaga and how he can spin the ball a little bit better to create better active spin to locate his fastball more and use it, make it a better weapon and make his pitches better and everything, and sort of the potential that he has. My next piece is going to be on Austin Nola about how he projects in the future and how San Diego should be happy that they have him. Um, it's a lot of fun. The people who work for the website are really, really nice. It's a great community to be a part of. On our Discord every day, it's just like fun baseball conversations, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of. Um, you know, I won't be doing. Hopefully, if things go well, I should say, and I get another job in baseball, I won't be writing for them forever. Uh, you know, but who knows what's going to happen with the job market right now? And if you're listening to this and wondering what the job market is, I can pretty confidently tell you that nobody knows. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of fun. Just sort of like my passion is like doing research into player analysis and stuff, and sort of like taking data and explaining it to people in understandable ways. That's what I like to do. That's what I'm good at. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun. Great people. Definitely read their work. It's really interesting. I think today somebody did an article about Giancarlo Stanton, and then there was the really good Kurt Schilling piece from Across the Seams about why Kurt Schilling shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame that Mike Petriello even tweeted and said was really good. So yeah,
Sounds good.
definitely. Yeah,
Peter
check it
Brand.
out.
No.
Uh,
That's what
great movie though.
that's what it reminded me of when you said you like doing the data and research with player analysis. It reminded me of
I
when
asked you 10 player evals. How many did you do? 47.
yeah, that's what it reminded
Actually,
me of.
53. I don't know why I just lied right there.
Yeah,
Unbelievable
that's such a
line.
great
So
line.
good.
Max, thanks for joining me. Appreciate it. How can people find you? Where do you want to plug yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my Twitter is at GreenfieldMax18. I do, as Steven said, every week on once a week after the Breaking Balls podcast is released, I'll do a research review. I also do sort of breakdowns of different sabermetrics on YouTube for that are called Breaking Ball breakdowns of just like explanations of what these statistics are. So if you have no knowledge of these numbers or anything like that, I can help explain them to you. Yeah, it's just that's pretty much, if you follow me, you probably are going to see a lot of tweets that are just talking about like the Hall of Fame right now and sort of like player evaluation and sort of just weird things in baseball. You're also going to see me try and get Steve Cohen's attention a lot just because he's got a lot of money and they could be hiring people and I want a job, and also just because I think I have an idea that he might like. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to have anybody. Just the only thing I ask is like just don't be rude. That's
Yeah.
pretty much it. Like that's all I ask. Don't be like a typical Twitter person. Luckily, nobody's too rude, so it doesn't really bother me.
Yep, that's some good advice there. All right, that's where you can find Max. Thanks for joining me again. By the way, stay tuned. Very, very soon, Nick Swisher, who was on the Hall of Fame ballot, will be joining RizzoCast. Took a while to get his attention, but I reached out on literally every platform, and now we have it was agreed upon, and now we're just trying to find a date. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe, like wherever you at, YouTube, Spotify, every podcast network via Anchor. Thanks for listening and have a great, great day.